distant past. The sovereigns, beings of immeasurable power that exist on the plane of reality known as Arya, create demonkind as a subordinate species meant to serve them. The first demon created is Polaris, an empathy demon crafted by Elatum, the sovereign of empathy. Envious of this act of creation, Dideridon, the gravitic sovereign, crafts Vega, the first sadism demon. The other sovereigns soon follow suit, creating scores of demons and binding them in their madrigals. The sovereigns are the only known source of the energy that sustains demons, leaving them at the former's mercy. Demons grow resentful of their mistreatment and begin to actively rebel. Roxit, the inchoate sovereign, discovers the ability to rift to an alternate plane of existence, Terra, where humanity resides. The sovereigns begin traveling there en masse, finding humans to be more malleable subjects than demons. In an attempt to turn them into a suitable replacement for demonkind, they begin twisted experiments meant to imbue humanity with powers. Each of the sovereigns that chose to experiment on humanity creates a branch of empowered humans that specialize in the same style of magic as that sovereign. The sovereign of fire, Tal'Reese, creates fire elementals through these efforts. The sovereign of dreams, Andelix, creates the dreamwalkers, etc. Azeron, the sovereign of desire, experiments the most forcefully, and his efforts backfire when he pushes the human form too far, inadvertently creating vampires. Meanwhile, demonkind discovers that human emotions act as a source of energy for them, comparable to that provided by the sovereigns, offering an alternative form of sustenance. Brachium is formed by Minara, the sovereign of serenity. He is the last demon crafted by a sovereign's hands directly. Humanity chooses to rebel against the sovereign's cruelty and ally themselves with the demons. Two sovereigns join their efforts, Elatum of empathy and Minara of serenity. A horrific conflict erupts, with Terra as the main front of the battle. The sovereigns appear to be winning given their greater power, but a last-minute sacrifice by Roxit of all his life force empowers large numbers of as-yet unempowered humans with his unfocused specialty of magic, creating the freelancers, and explaining why they are vastly more common than specialized empowereds. The drastic increase in empowered human forces tips the scales, and the alliance successfully beats the sovereigns. All sovereigns except Elatum and Minara are bound in the empty realm of death to prevent further conflict, believing that they will eventually starve. A contingent of serenity demons chooses to sacrifice themselves to the cause of watching over the sovereigns until their eventual end, with plans to feed on the gods to sustain themselves until eventually they all cease to exist. These demons take on the new moniker, Deathwalkers. Brachium is among them. The scale of the conflict and the drastic uptick in empowered humans drawing on magic puts incredible strain on the thin barrier between Terra and Arya, with collapse imminent. This would completely eliminate all of Terra. In order to prevent this, Elatum and Minara choose to make the sacrifice to reform themselves as a new barrier between those worlds, which comes to be known as the Meridian. Each of the remaining two sovereigns commit themselves to completing a parting act before they reform themselves into the Meridian. Minara uses her powers to establish the Elysian Well, an arcana forge that will periodically calcify the raw magical material of Arya into a new demon consciousness, allowing new demons to be formed long after all the sovereigns are gone. Elatum attempts to correct the mistakes of Azeron and heal the vampires, but his efforts do not translate as expected. The act imbues each vampire he attempted to help with a fragment of his sovereignty, granting them incredible power and reforming them as seers. He quickly abandons future efforts, leaving the rest of the vampires untouched, and seers as an unimaginably rare type of specialist. Demons discover that while human emotion is a suitable sustenance source for them, they each are only able to be sustained by particular kinds of emotion. Previously, they were grouped based on the sovereign that they served, but this revelation causes them to restructure themselves instead into categories based on their feeding capabilities. Demons that found that they could feed on feelings of empathy or serenity choose to keep the name demon, with an A, as an honorific to the empathy and serenity sovereigns that had sacrificed themselves to create the meridian. All other branches drop the A, going by demon, instead, as a way of distancing themselves from their prior lives of subjugation. Demonkind and humanity's alliance and relations wither over time in the absence of a shared enemy. As time wears on, empowered humans choose to keep their power secret from the unempowered masses that far outnumber them. Unempowered humans come to consider magical powers to be fictional. Empowered humans slowly lose their knowledge of their history, with it fading into folklore and then largely disappearing over the centuries. While demonkind maintains a better grasp on their history, it also becomes considered myth. Even those who were there for the conflict, like Vega, struggle to remember all the details of a time so far removed. The sovereigns imprisoned in death, now known as the Drove, begin to reach past the bounds of their prison in order to corrupt the realm. Their malice takes shape as the river, which carries the dead down to the Vale. As it does, it strips them of their memories, knowledge, and magic, and funnels all of that into the Drove, empowering them despite their imprisonment. The river strips the Deathwalkers of their memories as well, making them forget their original purpose to instead focus on ferrying and soothing the dead. The Drove grows stronger, unchecked. 1519. William Solaire is turned into a vampire in France as part of an attack from a roaming clan. His maker is a cruel man who turns him in a bid to bolster his clan's numbers. He subjects William to repeated bouts of invocation, forcing him to commit horrible acts in his maker's name. Later that next year, William manages to kill his maker and strikes out on his own, vowing to never become a maker himself. 1700s through 1800s. Magical affairs in North America have been primarily managed by an initially self-appointed group calling themselves the Ruling Council, seeking to provide large-scale resources and controls to the empowered population of the area. In an effort to legitimize themselves and become a more thorough infrastructure, the Ruling Council becomes an elected body and establishes a handful of departments below it to manage empowered needs. One of these departments, the one primarily focused on the creation of standardized magical edicts, practices, codes of conduct, and enforcement of covert, is named the Department of Uniform Magical Practices. 1874. Dahlia, California is appointed as the 8th cornerstone city, representing the Pacific Division of the United States. 1912. Aggressive reform efforts against the ruling council's unchecked oversight of empowered affairs results in severe restructuring of the magical government. The majority of the departments are culled, and the ruling council is changed to be a cameral adjunct rather than the executive body of empowered affairs. That position is instead granted to the Department of Uniform Magical Practices, which is drastically expanded to become the umbrella infrastructure to which the council and other bodies answer, effectively superseding its progenitor. Despite its wildly expanded breadth, its original name is kept in place. Explanations for this odd decision vary wildly to this day. McKinley is appointed as the 9th cornerstone city, representing the Mountain Division of the United States. It's declared to be the final one, and the existing divisions have their borders adjusted as a result. 1924. Dahlia Academy for Magical Novices opens its doors in Dahlia, California. 1949. Vesta Distribution Co. begins operations in Dahlia. 1951. Demons are finally given seats on the ruling council amid ongoing protests. This gesture from the department is considered to be largely performative, given the council's limited executive power, and instead is used as justification for increased oversight from the department over demonic affairs now that they have been granted political representation. 1968. Max's Rustic Pizza in Dahlia opens its doors for the first time. 1969. Alexis Getty is turned into a vampire by William Solaire, becoming his first progeny. She had suffered mortal injuries at the hands of a rogue vampire that William had been attempting to hunt down after repeated transgressions by them into his territory. The rogue vampire attacked Alexis in a bid to restore his energies, drained as he was from the hunt. William ended him, but was too late to save Alexis by conventional means. He offered to turn her, and she accepted. She becomes a very difficult progeny to steward, and William vows to never again become a maker, particularly to someone he knows so little about before turning. He forms Solaire Property Management and continues his real estate investments. 1971. Porter, a freelancer, is born. 1979. Samuel Collins, a freelancer, is born in Mont Blanc. 1980. Vincent, an unempowered human, is born in New Mexico. 1983. The first ever Elemental and Energetic Games is hosted at DAM, organized by the Dahlia Elemental and Energetic Society. 1985. The Wonderworld amusement park opens to considerable fanfare in Dahlia. It becomes a frequent feeding ground for the House of Solaire, who have set up roots in the region. 1987. Gabriel Shaw forms his pack in Dahlia and gives it his name. His friend, Gregory Keaton, forms a pack of his own in the same region, and they remain close. The Talbots are among the founding members of the Shaw Pack, and Frank Talbot, longtime friend of the Shaws, is appointed to be Gabe's beta. An inchoate demon named Avier coalesces in the Elysian Well in Aria. An inchoate demon named Cercinus becomes his steward. 1990. An incubus named Vindemiator coalesces in the Elysian Well in Aria. Ophiuchus becomes his steward. This pairing goes very poorly almost immediately. Aaron, an unempowered human, is born. 1993. David Shaw and Asher Talbot, both wolf shifters, are born in Dahlia. Milo Greer, another wolf shifter, is born on the East Coast to Marie and Colum Greer, the latter of whom is a department investigator. 1994. Lasco Moore, an air elemental, is born to unempowered parents who don't know about magic. Elliot is adopted by Aaron's family. None of them are aware that Elliot is actually a dreamwalker that somehow ended up in the unempowered world's adoption system. 1995. Gabe Shaw's mate, David's mother, dies. Gabe never takes another mate. Sam goes on a trip to Six Flags Magic Mountain with friends from high school, visiting California for the first time. Later that year, Sam runs away from Mont Blanc to escape his abusive family upbringing. He makes his way across the country, heading for Dahlia. 1997. Huxley is born in a small town outside of Kennedy. William purchases the Skyside estate outside of Dahlia and begins a renovation overhaul of it. 1999. Calum, an empathy demon, coalesces in the Elysian Well in Aria. An empathy demon named Delphinus becomes his steward. Elliot drowns in a boating accident, though he is resuscitated. While in the River of Death, he's watched over by Brachium, a Deathwalker who has long since forgotten his origins as a Serenity demon thanks to the machinations of the river. Elliot maintains no memories of his interactions with Brachium. Damien, a fire elemental, is born in Dahlia to Sophia and her then-husband. Sam starts coursework part-time at the Dahlia Academy for Magical Novices, pursuing certification in healing. The Greer family moves to Dahlia with their young son Milo, as a result of a mandatory transfer for Column. They aren't interested in maintaining ties to their old pack due to prior disputes, and they instead join the Shaw pack. 2000. January 1st. The Surge roller coaster debuts at Wonderworld Amusement Park. February 13th. A catastrophic accident with the Surge roller coaster kills roughly 30 people, with one person reported missing. Vincent sustains mortal injuries in the accident and is subsequently turned into a vampire by William Solaire without consultation. He becomes the second Solaire progeny. The speed of the unempowered emergency response to the disaster does not allow the department enough time to falsify his death, so he is officially labeled as missing by the unempowered authorities. March of that same year. Vincent resents being turned, and as the reality of his future sets in, he refuses to feed on blood. The initial amount of William's blood provided during the turning has sustained him thus far, but that effect soon wears off. His health continues to decline. When all other efforts to convince him otherwise fail, William finally invokes Vincent, forcing him to feed. Though effective as a life-saving measure, it sends Vincent and William's relationship even harder into a nosedive. It takes years for the situation to improve. 2001. The management company that owned Wonderworld fully collapses amid the legal disputes and lawsuits that it cannot afford. With the department's blessing, William buys out the land that Wonderworld is built on to discourage further investigation into the missing person case for the sake of covert. Asher falls out of an orange tree he and David were climbing in the Shaw's backyard, and he breaks his arm. 2003. Sam graduates from DAM with his certification in healing and begins work in the field. 2004. Vincent and William's relationship remains fraught, but the former agrees to go to the monarchal summit when asked. His efforts to frustrate William at the party fail, and William instead reasserts that he's proud of Vincent for all of his progress, and presents him with his crown as Prince of the Solaires. Relationships slowly begin to improve. Porter is turned against his will by a vampire named Felix. He is one of many progeny, all treated as an enclave at his maker's beck and call through constant invocation and harsh punishment. 2006. Sophia, Damien's mother, becomes one of the first human-borns to attain full certification at the Dahlia Academy for Magical Novices. Elliot's powers begin to manifest, though it's not immediately obvious what they are, since he has no context for what magic would be like. 2007. Lasco's powers begin to manifest as a result of entering puberty. His parents respond very poorly, and instead of seeking answers, proceed to isolate him from the outside world. Darlin and their parents move to Dahlia from Washington. They become members of the Shaw Pack. Members of the Shaw Pack go on a trip up to their regular camping spot. Gabe falls out of the back of the Greer's pickup truck, causing David and Asher to shift and run to him, but he's unharmed, and it becomes a treasured story. 2008. Sam meets Alexis, and they start an erratic relationship that Sam quickly tries to end. Alexis is resistant to the idea, but agrees. That evening, they are part of a terrible car accident that leaves Sam mortally wounded. Despite his insistence that he can heal himself, and that even if he cannot, he does not wish to be a vampire, Alexis forces the turning onto him. She never apologizes for the act. William is furious with Alexis when he finds out the circumstances of the turning, and he invokes her so that she's unable to invoke Sam in the future. Vincent is equally upset with her, and her continued behavior afterward, and their relationship deteriorates rapidly as a result. Sam becomes a duke within the House of Solaire, but avoids Alexis. With her ability to invoke him taken from her, she generally ignores him as well. Vincent and William step in to help guide Sam through his new experience as a vampire. He and Vincent become close friends. 2010. Vindemiator now goes by the chosen name Gavin, and has distanced himself from Aria whenever possible. He attempts to go to DAM for full certification, planning to work for the department upon graduation, but faces prejudice and disregard. He changes plans, leaning into studies provided by the demonic school instead, but is made very uncomfortable by the attitudes there in regards to being an incubus. He leaves the program. Elliot finally realizes the extent of his powers, and he finds a fellow magic user by the energy signature from their core. While he is unsure what the feeling itself is, he correctly identifies it as being related to his mysterious powers. They're able to direct him to the department, who are shocked to discover his circumstances given his adoption. He's granted permission to tell his family the situation, provided they are sworn to secrecy as informed unempowereds, and he does so. This revelation about his nature causes a divide to grow between him and his unempowered older brother, Aaron. 2011. Lasco's powers reach a breaking point, and he finally runs away from home. He finds someone who exudes a magical aura, and though he isn't sure what it is, he recognizes it as being linked to his mysterious powers and asks them for help. The stranger is a psychokinetic named Jessica, who realizes he's a human-born unempowered and takes him to the department for debriefing. The department arranges temporary housing, and Lasco starts a rudimentary magical education, though it is slow going due to his hesitance to use his powers. Asher's sister, Madeline, marries and moves to Michigan to her new husband's hometown. 2012. Porter's maker, Felix, is finally apprehended and executed after attacking the family member of a department official. Freed from his control, Porter runs away and eventually finds his way to Solaire territory, where he is taken in by William. His magical powers are nurtured, and he relearns much of his lost abilities. He takes on the Solaire name in honor of what William has meant to him, with William's blessing. His relationship with Vincent is fraught from the start, based on misunderstandings and envy on both of their parts. Blake, a seer, confides in his childhood best friend about the reality of his powers, having pretended to be a dreamwalker up to that point for his own safety, and tells them that he has seen their death. He also confesses his feelings for them. They reject his offer for a relationship, unable to accept being with a seer in that way. They reach a compromise of sorts, where Blake agrees not to talk about his sight so that they can live their life unhindered, and he remains in their life, but on the fringes. Secretly, his interest in them only deepens, however. 2015. Frank Talbot, Asher's father, steps down from his role as Pac Beta, a position he held for 28 years. He and his wife leave Dahlia to fulfill their dream of traveling the world. Asher stays in Dahlia with the rest of the Shaw Pack. David is appointed the new Pac Beta under Gabe. Colum Greer, Milo's father, finally seeks help for his gambling addiction. He begins to make meaningful progress, but his relationship with Milo remains strained. Adam Jessup, an unempowered human, is willingly turned into a vampire. Relations with his maker deteriorate quickly, however, as soon as he realizes the level of control she's capable of exerting over him. Aaron starts work at Vesta Distribution Co. 2016. Sunshine is involved in a fatal car accident, though they are eventually resuscitated. While in the river of death, they encounter Brachium and unknowingly form a connection with him after he interferes to buy them time. The Keaton Pack makes a unanimous decision to move north to Ferris, feeling that Dahlia has grown too crowded for them to comfortably operate. Lasco finally gains the confidence to begin his magical education in earnest and enrolls at DAM to pursue a full certification. December of that year. Sweetheart, an accomplished stealth and department investigator, begins an investigation into a shade loose in Dahlia. It was last suspected of being present at that year's Elemental and Energetic Games. The Shaw Pack worked as supplementary security there, and Sweetheart seeks out Milo to see if he has any information. They specifically choose to approach him rather than another pack member or the Pack Alpha, because Milo's father was a department investigator. This backfires, though, because Milo has a very strained relationship with his father and feels no obligation to the department. Ultimately, Milo provides what little information he has and asks to be kept posted. 2017. Sweetheart and Milo agree to hunt the shade together. They are ultimately successful, though Milo sustains injury while defending Sweetheart. Sweetheart heals Milo so that he can avoid suspicion from his pack, who he has chosen not to inform about the situation. A relationship blooms between the two of them. Huxley moves away from his hometown on his own, wanting to enroll at DAM. His moms stay in their hometown, and he moves to Dahlia and begins his coursework. Sweetheart returns to Milo's place after having snuck out in the night after their healing session. They apologize for having ghosted him since then and ask him out on a date, which he happily accepts. September 3rd of that year. Gabriel Shaw is struck by a drunk driver in the evening on his drive home and dies in the accident. David is appointed to be Pack Alpha and accepts the role, although he feels deeply unprepared for it. He feels isolated from the rest of the pack in his grief and struggles to balance that grieving with the responsibilities thrust upon him. Distance quickly grows between him and his friends as he struggles to find a middle ground between being Alpha and being himself. David appoints Asher to be his Beta. The decision is heavily questioned by the rest of the pack, causing division and only increasing David's self-doubts. Asher faces severe skepticism and criticism from the pack members, which shakes his confidence in his ability to do the job and puts him under heavy strain. He feels isolated, not unlike David does, with the majority of his support system gone. His parents and sister no longer live in Dahlia, and his friendship with David, once a source of support and comfort, is becoming increasingly complicated and distant. Darlin's parents move back to Washington, but they choose to remain in Dahlia with the rest of the pack. Ivan is an unempowered human, born and living in Montana, who has been in a serious relationship with Baby for years. Lack of honest communication about each of their internal struggles leads to them breaking up. He moves to Dahlia, having been offered a position with Vesta Distribution Co., and he leaves them a voicemail attempting to explain his actions. Unbeknownst to Ivan, a sadism demon named Vega has become interested in him and sees an opportunity to experiment with the creation of a sustained source of the sadistic energy which he feeds on, considering it a personal project. As part of the groundwork for this project, Vega erases the voicemail and record of the call from Baby's phone before they are aware of its existence in a bid to further isolate Ivan. Freelancer has been hiding their powers from the world ever since they started to manifest. The feelings of isolation and frustration start to reach an untenable level. Calum is assigned Freelancer as a charge and meets them for the first time. 2018. A position opens in Ivan's department at Vesta. Seeing a chance to finally execute his plan, Vega begins the process of slowly manipulating Ivan's emotions and mindset to turn the human's innocent passing interest in one of the applicants into a dangerous obsession. Ultimately, Ollie is hired for the position at Vesta instead of the applicant Ivan desired. Huxley joins the sports team at Dam and meets Xavier. He also meets and befriends Lasco, although they drift apart later that year. Ollie struggles with the new job, but improves with training from a friendly coworker. David continues to expand his father's business of for-hire security work, employing most of the members of the pack and establishing its reputation in the region. While delivering paperwork for a security job, Asher becomes stuck in an elevator with Babe, an unempowered human. He gives them his number, and they begin dating. Angel breaks up with their then-boyfriend, Michael, leaving the cat they adopted together with him. Milo finds Sweetheart in the midst of a panic attack, which has driven them to cloak uncontrollably. He successfully comforts them and helps them recover. Porter and Vincent's conflict comes to a head, and the two come to blows. Porter is seemingly sent away by William for his part in it. This is largely a cover story, so that Porter can continue to act as William's operative with less suspicion. 2019. Asher confesses his love for Babe while playing video games. Adam kills his maker when the opportunity finally presents itself, draining her. As a result, he enters a feral state that's mistaken for being a newborn at the peak of bloodlust. He's found and taken in by members of the Solaire clan, and when he calms down to a cognizant state, he chooses not to correct their belief about his vampiric age. Early in the year, David meets Angel, not knowing that is due to Calum's interference. They begin dating. David confesses his love for Angel while playing video games. Damien begins his coursework at DAM, seeking full certification. Smartass starts work at Vesta Distribution Co., reporting to Aaron. Late in that year, David, now living with Angel, continues to refuse to shift in front of them due to his fear of their potential response. 2020. February. David and Angel have their first Valentine's Day together. March. On the eve of their first anniversary, David finally shifts in front of Angel. Though there is some initial shock, they ultimately handle it well. May. Elliot admits to tampering with his friend Sunshine's dreams in a bid to bring an end to their recurring nightmares that have resulted from their traumatic car accident. In doing so, he alludes to his deeper feelings for them. The next day, Elliot fully admits those feelings in detail, and a relationship starts. Damien and Cody are paired together in an introductory elemental command class. Cody does not take the project seriously, flaking out on practice sessions and then not showing up for the final. Damien attempts to do the final practical presentation on his own, but is unable to handle it and fails the final and the class. June. A series of misunderstandings leads David to briefly fear that Angel might be cheating on him. After an argument about it, the situation is resolved, and their trust and feelings for one another are reaffirmed. Ivan is unknowingly completely under Vega's thrall at this point. He switches to exclusively working from home. Jordy, an unempowered human, meets Cutie, a telepath, while on a run. He's unaware that they have powers and that they are listening in on his thoughts. They begin dating. Darlin, having grown increasingly distant from the Shaw Pack in recent years, begins a brief dalliance with a vampire named Quinn. They quickly realize that he's a criminal with violent disregard for humans and report him to the department. In retaliation, Quinn attacks an unempowered friend of Darlin's. While Darlin is able to arrive in time and fight him off, he escapes. When David and the Shaw Pack hear what happened, they attempt to rally behind Darlin, but Darlin wants personal revenge on Quinn and believes that can be best achieved by distancing themselves from the pack to keep the others safe. They lie to David, saying that Quinn was apprehended by the department, and they move back to Washington under the guise of recovery, while actually planning their hunt. July. Ollie confesses his feelings to his coworker. A relationship starts. Ivan leaves another voicemail for his prior partner, Baby, now taunting them sinisterly, but this voicemail is also blocked from reaching its target by Vega to prevent suspicion. Ivan follows the applicant he's grown obsessed with to a club, and when, unbeknownst to him, Vega causes a fight to erupt, Ivan seizes the opportunity and kidnaps them. Ivan later confesses the depths of his feelings to the applicant. The applicant eventually tries to escape, but they are caught by Ivan in the attempt. August. Guy, an unempowered human, moves in with a new friend, Honey, and another fellow student. It quickly becomes clear that the third person on the lease is not a good fit. On a rare night when Vincent is patrolling the grounds of Wonderworld, he encounters Lovely, when the latter explores Wonderworld alone at night, prompted by stories of supernatural occurrences there. Adam and other clan members are on site for a meeting and see the interaction. Adam takes particular interest. Vincent meets Lovely at their apartment the next night. He is overcome with bloodlust and, unable to pinpoint why, leaves abruptly to prevent an incident. Lovely attempts to find Vincent despite warnings not to. They arrive at Wonderworld, are tranced by Adam, then Vincent appears, chasing Adam off and feeding on Lovely's wrist after succumbing to his urges, with their permission. Upon regaining consciousness, Lovely is comforted by Vincent, who explains his vampiric nature in detail. Fascinated by his brief taste of Lovely's blood, Adam kidnaps them. He hides away in Wonderworld beneath the wreckage of Surge in a spot that he masks from detection through magic. He proceeds to feed on and torment Lovely. After roughly a day with Adam, Lovely's latent electro-energetic powers manifest in light of their trauma, and they use said powers to incapacitate Adam briefly. The break in concentration causes the wards hiding the spot to fail, and Vincent finds them. Adam is killed unceremoniously. Given that he's a vampire, his body disintegrates into ash, leaving only bones behind. Vincent takes Lovely to his home and gets Sam to heal them as best he can. Vincent then explains magic as a whole, and Lovely's latency in particular, in as much detail as he can. A month into captivity with Ivan, the applicant is plagued with nightmares regarding their situation and their conflicted emotions about it. The applicant admits the details of the nightmares to Ivan, who alludes to his prior relationship and its failure. Freelancer finally chooses to join the magical world at large and seeks out the academy based on remarks from Calum about its existence and relative location. Unsure on details, they sense Gavin's magic nearby and attempt, successfully, to get the location from him. Freelancer is assigned Lasco as a guidance counselor, and he helps them get their schedule sorted. Lasco visits the 7-Eleven that Gavin frequents, and they meet. He returns again later that same day to meet with him a second time. Freelancer begins classes and shares introductory elemental command with Damien, who is retaking it after failing it the semester prior. They are assigned to work together and practice extensively for the class together. Freelancer's acquaintance with Gavin takes an intimate turn under the guise of studying. While on campus, Freelancer encounters Cody. He is very forward and eventually bridges with them without explaining the details, implications, or intimacy of the act to them before doing so. Freelancer leaves the interaction deeply shaken. Later that same day, Freelancer runs into Huxley in the quad. He immediately recognizes that something is bothering them, and when they explain the situation that occurred, he is rightfully horrified for them. He explains the gravity of what happened, and in doing so validates their deep discomfort with what was done to them. Asher, now in an established live-in relationship with Babe, invites them to a future pack meeting. David comforts Angel during a storm, the first that they've experienced in the home they've recently moved into. He discusses the difficulties of intimate relationships in regards to being an alpha. September. Asher comforts Babe's insecurities about going to the pack meeting. David admits the significance of the date, September 3rd, to Angel, confirming that it's the 3rd anniversary of his father's death. He expands on the feelings of inadequacy that continue to haunt him. Calum helps Freelancer with the school projects that they are struggling with. Lovely moves in with Vincent amidst fears for their safety. They choose to take their relationship slowly, getting to know one another better first. Lovely continues therapy in the wake of the incident and seeks guidance in regards to their burgeoning powers. Vincent and Lovely both make plans to begin coursework at DAM. Ivan continues his manipulative tactics against the applicant, giving them specific new freedoms that don't actually afford them any meaningful autonomy. David teaches Angel how to cook a meal. He promises to learn how to play their favorite video game at a later date in return. Asher gives David a jacket in the same style that Gabe used to wear, but in a size suitable for him. It becomes a new favorite of his, though he is hesitant to admit it. October. Caleb returns to Freelancer after being brutally attacked by a sadism demon, Vega. Vega is actively feeding on Ivan and his applicant victim to excess, and despite this being technically acceptable by demon customs, Caleb attempted to stop him nonetheless, and was soundly defeated. Asher takes care of Babe when the latter is sick. He laments his lack of magical knowledge that would help them, discussing the general disinterest in shifter culture for learning other branches of magic. Ollie has a breakfast date with his co-worker partner, which has become a regular occurrence. He confirms that Ivan, their other co-worker, has been more amiable since switching to working from home. Elliot's relationship with Sunshine continues to grow deeper. He saves them from a nightmare and shares a spot of special significance with them in the dreamscape. Freelancer continues with their schooling. Their relationship with Gavin becomes more serious, forcing him to reconcile his preconceptions about how others can feel about him. In the wake of Caleb's attack, Freelancer insists that Lasco adds healing courses to their new schedule. He expresses concerns about their workload, but concedes. Damien affirms their abilities. Milo confesses to Sweetheart that other pack members are mocking him for the size of his wolf form when shifted. He agrees to discuss it with David at their suggestion. Vega finds Freelancer and threatens both them and Caleb if Caleb attempts to interfere with his plans again. Asher and David spend Halloween night together with Babe at David's home. Angel is away on business. Asher admits to avoiding the mandatory classes for having breached covert with Babe. An unempowered human, Frederick, is convinced by his unempowered friend to sneak onto the grounds of Wonderworld on Halloween night to conduct urban exploration. Unbeknownst to them, Quinn, a rogue vampire, has returned to Dahlia and has snuck onto the grounds that night as well. He catches them and mortally wounds both of them. Sam, who had been on guard duty that evening, reaches the scene in time to run him off and finds Frederick. Too late to heal him by conventional means, he offers to turn Frederick to save his life, not realizing there's another wounded human there as well. Frederick accepts and is turned, becoming Sam's first progeny. Frederick shows Sam his friend and asks that he turn them as well. Sam tells him that isn't possible because the exertion would kill him. Frederick turns his friend as a result, before Sam can stop him, nearly dying in the process, and becomes a maker of his own mere minutes after being turned. The House of Solaire gains 2 new members. November. Vincent and Lovely have a night-in dinner date and continue to grow closer. Vincent is told by William about the attack that occurred on Halloween night, and Sam's newfound status as a maker. Angel returns from their work trip. Sam trains both Frederick and Frederick's progeny, becoming a mentor to both of them and teaching them what it is to be a vampire and a member of the House of Solaire. David gets word of the 2 new members of the House of Solaire as part of his efforts to keep an eye on all the major groups acting in Dahlia. His curiosity is piqued. It's unprecedented for the House of Solaire to gain 2 new members in such quick succession. He asks his contacts within the department to seek more details into the nature of these additions to William's house. Huxley observes how affected by Cody's actions Freelancer is and urges them to report the bridging incident. Freelancer reports the bridging incident to Lasco, who earnestly pursues it, but the Academy takes limited action. Cody confronts Freelancer about the damage done to his reputation and asserts that he is the victim. Freelancer tells Damien what happened, and he offers them his support, expounding upon the inequality at the Academy that allows situations like this to occur and then go unpunished. Asher is forced to attend the mandatory classes for having told Babe about magic without prior permission from the Department of Uniform Magical Practices. Camelopardalis continues to offer serenity to his charge. He wipes their memory of the event, as he has done countless times before. Emboldened by his growing closeness to the applicant, Ivan begins to drop some of his facade. Gavin opens up more to Freelancer, admitting to his reasoning behind certain actions. Regulus, an empathy demon that has succumbed to an obsessive, possessive nature that endangers himself, his charges, and those around him, traps his favorite charge in their home. December. Milo comforts Sweetheart after a bad day. He discusses having told Milo his problems with the bullying, which David takes very seriously. He also mentions working a seer conference, where he and the pack were hired to guard an important guest, Morgan Kine. The applicant attempts to hide from Ivan, but the effort is unsuccessful. Freelancer continues to grow closer to their new friends. Lasco tells them about his passion for D&D. Huxley discusses his reasoning for moving out to Dahlia. Damien doubles down on his frustration with the inequality at Dam and mentions his mother becoming one of the first fully certified humanborns. Cody continues to attempt to gaslight Freelancer, now with promises of power and a desire for change. Gavin explains Aria as the magical plane and home of the demons, and his own struggles against the expectations of his kind. He also reveals his given name was Vendimiator, but that he chose a new one. David discusses the significance of the moonbound solstice with Angel, and its importance to him and the pack in particular. David and Angel host the pack's party for the occasion, where tensions between Milo, Asher, and Christian come to a head, egged on by Arden and Kelsey. Ultimately, all members reaffirm their commitment to the pack and its continued success. In the wake of his behavior at the Moonbound party, Asher admits to Babe his feelings of inadequacy in his role as Beta, the increasingly complicated nature of his relationship with David, and his concerns about how fit he is for the role. Caleb meets up with Freelancer, explaining a plan to wrest control of the 2 unempowered humans from Vega in a way that won't break demonic customs. The 38th annual Elemental and Energetic Games is hosted by the Magical Studies Academy of McKinley. 2021. January. Vincent helps Lovely relax and reminds them to not lose themselves in the new exploration of their powers and the magical world at large. Ollie shares his love of the board game Scythe with his co-worker partner. Vincent and Lovely's relationship reaches a point of trust where Lovely asks Vincent to bite their neck. Their relationship grows stronger as a result. Months with Ivan and his rhetoric leave the applicant haunted with conflicted thoughts and feelings, even in dreams. David finally makes good on his promise to try playing Angel's favorite game. Damien finally opens up to Freelancer about his reasoning for becoming fully certified, wanting to defy the bigoted stereotypes that others try to use to define him. He further reveals his plan to create an academic club designed to help human-born magic users acclimate, feeling the dam's measly efforts in that regard are wildly insufficient. Huxley confesses to the Freelancer his feelings of loneliness and being constantly misunderstood and used by others. Lasco relays to Freelancer the fraught story of how his powers manifested and what his life was like before finding the magical world, connecting with them over the often painful reality of being a human-born. Cody leaves Dam and Dahlia, still blaming Freelancer for his own problems. Freelancer finally breaks down under the pressure and reveals to Gavin the bridging incident, Calum, his plan, and Vega's threats. The incubus comforts them. Xavier becomes the captain of Huxley's sports team and begins to attempt to bolster the team's camaraderie. February. Asher comforts Babe when their efforts to get a new job within their company falls through. Vincent finally explains all the details of his turning to Lovely, relaying what happened 21 years prior at Wonderworld. Gavin and Freelancer explore what Valentine's Day means for them. Ivan continues his conditioning of the applicant and announces his plans to move them into his bedroom from now on. While listening in on Geordie's thoughts, Cutie hears him experience the thought that he loves them. They decide to explain that magic exists and that they are a telepath. Geordie is initially skeptical, but becomes convinced after they demonstrate their abilities. Elliot allows Sunshine to enter the dream he's working on for a contract as a defensive dream designer. He explains the process of defensive dream design to them while he works. March. Ollie has a lazy morning with his partner. David and Angel spend the morning landscaping their yard. He tells the story of Asher breaking his arm and of his mom's love of honeysuckle plants and the hummingbirds that they draw in. The conflict with Vega comes to a head. Calum seeks shelter with Freelancer and Gavin, but Vega appears. He and Gavin fight, with Vega ultimately losing. Gavin sends him to the department to face punishment. Gavin and Calum go to the home where Calum first found Vega and discover Ivan and the applicant. Gavin incapacitates Ivan and calls the department to the scene so that both the applicant and Ivan's memories can be modified to a time before they were affected by Vega. Gavin receives a proverbial slap on the wrist, but returns to Freelancer without incident. Camilo Pardalis leads the memory modification effort for the applicant, while his associate Crux does the same for Ivan. Each have their memories reset to a time before Vega had influenced them, and they return to their prior lives. Thanks to Crux, all of Ivan's memories of his actions taken against the applicant and the feelings that Vega had implanted and fostered are gone. Memories are implanted that encourage Ivan to fly back home to Montana for a visit, with his memory modifiers believing that having him reconnect with family might help him. Of his own volition, during his return home to Montana, Ivan reaches out again to Baby, his ex-partner from years prior, seeing an opportunity to catch up and make amends. Ivan's effort to reconnect is successful, being able to properly explain and apologize for his part in their breakup, honestly assessing where his shortcomings in that situation had been, and expressing an interest in trying out a relationship with them again, if they want to. Baby reciprocates those feelings, and they rekindle their relationship, with Ivan moving back to Montana while maintaining his job with Vesta Distribution, now working fully remote. April. Darlin's hunt for Quinn leads them back to Dahlia. They are particularly drawn toward Wonderworld, where they can detect a vague impression of him from the small amounts of his blood that Frederick managed to spill while resisting Quinn's attack on Halloween night the year prior. Asher and Babe build a pillow fort and relax together. On an evening when Sam is keeping watch around Wonderworld, Darlin appears and asks about Quinn, saying they can detect his presence having been there. They're surprised to learn he hasn't been there in 6 months, and Sam is equally surprised that they could detect a trail that old. It shouldn't be possible. They explain that they're hunting him down after he attacked a human friend of theirs in the past. Sam agrees to help if possible, but maintains that his first priority must be to the newborn vamps. Camilo Pardalis seeks the help of a human-empowered therapist at DAM, and admits to the terrible burden he put upon himself by managing the applicant's memory modification on his own. He now holds all the memories of their time with Ivan, and he had to live through them in order to erase them. Overcome by his conflicting desires to seek help but foster only serenity, he erases the therapist's memories after confessing to his struggles rather than allowing them to try and help. David and Angel go for a night swim together. Vincent helps Lovely get some sleep. Lovely meets William for the first time. He apologizes for not realizing Adam's true colors sooner, affirms that Lovely has the full protections of the clan, and attempts, unsuccessfully, to reveal some embarrassing stories about Vincent. May. Lasco graduates with his full certification from DAM. He's offered a full-time position at the academy as a joint guidance counselor/instructor and accepts. He also chooses to continue his studies the next semester, seeking higher education in Air Elemental Command. In an effort to get ahead of the criticisms about their policies and practices surrounding human-born individuals, the department rolls out their Supplemental Human-Born Informative Training Program. The living arrangement that Guy and Honey are a part of becomes untenable, and they resolve to move out together and get their own place. They confess their feelings for one another and begin a relationship. Smartass is offered and accepts a position with a different company. A farewell party is thrown in their honor. Afterward, their former boss, Aaron, confronts them about their sudden distance from him as soon as they put in their 2 weeks' notice. They each reveal their feelings for the other and agree to go on a date now that they no longer work together. Smartass and Aaron's relationship turns physical, and they begin to date in earnest. With the threat of Vega behind them, Calum and Freelancer spend a lazy morning together, like old times. Freelancer organizes a bowling night with their friends. Gavin and Lasco are reunited for the first time since the 7-Eleven encounter. Huxley and Lasco are reunited for the first time in years. Damien, Gavin, and Huxley all meet each other for the first time. The gathering goes well, continuing late into the night after they all go to Huxley's apartment to play video games. The group begins the slow process of becoming friends in earnest. David plays Destiny 2 while Angel keeps him company. David's contacts in the department finally relay the full story of Frederick and his friends turning, having been slowed greatly in their research efforts by the House of Solaire's drive to maintain secrecy. The mentions of a rogue vampire and the method of attack remind David of Quinn. He begins digging back into the Quinn case, looking for more information regarding his imprisonment. Dump and Dam begin accepting bids for the security contract for the Elemental and Energetic Games scheduled to take place that December. The Shaw Pack puts in for consideration, though the drastic growth of the competition compared to its size when they last worked it leads to some hesitance on David's part to apply. Elliot and Sunshine act out a dream that they've crafted, where Sunshine is a mage who gets to defeat a dragon and save Elliot. June. Freelancer hosts a party for their friends. Things heat up with Gavin in the kitchen. Gavin admits the depths of his feelings for Freelancer to them, and they reciprocate the confession. Their relationship, while already serious, grows even deeper. The Shaw Pack wins the bid for the 39th Annual Elemental and Energetic Games, scheduled for December and hosted by DAM. Preparations begin. Darlin gets into a fight with two vampires while hunting Quinn. They survive the encounter, but with serious injuries. Sam lends his aid and insists again that they be more careful. Asher plays Halo while Babe watches. Vincent and Lovely have a romantic night together. The sunbound solstice lands on Father's Day, and the combination of those two affects David deeply. He leans heavily on Angel for support, and they happily provide it. Darlin reaches out to Sam, hoping he might have answers. They admit that they themselves don't know why they can track Quinn, and that they're scared of the implications of that. Sam confirms that they must be blood-bound to Quinn, which will allow each side to detect the other's blood when it's outside their body. Given this danger, he again pleads with them to be careful. David and Angel enjoy a hot day in the pool. Aaron confronts Smartass about the nature of their relationship. They each discuss their needs, and both come out of the conversation stronger for it. David's research into Quinn reveals that Darlin had lied. Quinn was never apprehended by the department. It was a ruse so that they could hunt him privately. David renews his efforts to get in contact with Darlin, who has mostly been ignoring his attempts to communicate ever since they left Dahlia in the wake of the original attack. July. Having been unable to reach Darlin, David makes contact with their family in Washington. They confirm that while Darlin really did return there and recovered, they also left months ago, heading back to Dahlia. Darlin finally answers David soon afterward, but they lie again, telling him they're still in Washington. He starts putting together the full series of events. Vincent and Lovely share an intimate moment underneath the 4th of July fireworks. Asher and Babe share a steamy picnic. Milo and Sweetheart go on a vacation up to a cabin that the Shaw Pack has frequented in prior years. Caleb manages to get Camelopardalis and the applicant stuck together in an elevator. Cam gets to see firsthand the positive impact he's had on the applicant's life, and while he still has a lot of work to do addressing his own trauma, he feels reinvigorated to seek help, the right way this time. David helps Angel get back to sleep. He admits that he used to suffer from insomnia as a child, resulting from repeated nightmares, but that his dad was a source of support. Dump releases an informative video outlining the history of the Elemental and Energetic Games and the qualifying process that will open in the coming months. David reaches out to Sam to get more details regarding Darlin's situation so that he can be better prepared to offer help. Sam and David meet regarding Darlin. David primarily wants to inform Sam of the danger that Quinn presents so that he and the rest of the House of Solaire can be prepared. He details the events that have led to this point and asks if Darlin is all right. Sam confirms that they are. David explains his plan to confront Darlin and apologizes for having put Sam in an awkward position, stating that it's up to Sam whether or not he wants to warn Darlin about the pending meeting. Sam warns Darlin, and they choose to stay at their apartment until David arrives. He confronts them about their lies and expresses that while he understands and can appreciate their motivations and their desire to keep the rest of the pack safe, their actions have instead put the pack into serious danger while simultaneously not alerting them to said danger. He adds that he's worried for them, having already heard about their attack on the two vampires and their consistent disregard for their own safety. He and the rest of the pack want to help. The Shaw pack has a meeting to discuss the situation and make plans to lean on Dump to pursue Quinn while they focus on safety measures in the face of the threat he poses. Darlin asks Sam to come over after the meeting. They each affirm that neither is upset with the other, and Sam details his past with Alexis and the violent circumstances of his turning. They fall asleep together on the couch that night. Darlin and Sam wake up the next day, and they confess their interest in one another. They don't yet settle on what they're going to be, but choose to just enjoy their time together and see what comes. August. Freelancer goes on a hike with Huxley before the coming semester. They discuss his bittersweet feelings towards his pending graduation and his excitement for the Elemental and Energetic Games, which he plans to enter for the first time. Freelancer meets up with Damien before the coming semester. They discuss their plans for classes this year, and Damien encourages Freelancer to enter the Elemental and Energetic Games, which he also plans to enter for the first time. Freelancer gets ice cream with Lasco before the coming semester. They discuss his excitement at having attained full certification and his plans to jointly teach and act as a guidance counselor. He agrees that Freelancer should enter the games, but has no interest in competing in them himself. The department assigns Warden, an inchoate demon, to Vega's case, asking that they attempt to rehabilitate him. Their initial meeting does not involve much progress, but Vega expresses interest in Warden's earnest nature and desire to help, though to what end is unclear. Lovely hears about the Elemental and Energetic Games and is excited at the prospect of competing. Vincent is unfamiliar with the games, but heartily encourages them to compete. Ollie offers his partner comfort when they express concern over their struggle to reach a decision about their future. Sweetheart tricks Milo into trying out the game Prey. September. David and Angel spend the 4th anniversary of Gabe's passing at the campsite that he, David, and the rest of the pack used to frequent. David shares stories about his dad and finds comfort rather than sadness in that, which he finds encouraging. They scratch the lottery ticket that Gabe had bought him on their final trip together, and although it wins $20, David chooses to keep it. Vincent begins learning healing magic, taking courses at DAM and training with Sam to help alleviate the pressure on Sam of being the only member of the House of Solaire with a knowledge of healing. Freelancer struggles to sleep one night when Gavin is away, and Caleb appears in order to help them. He mentions a fable involving 2 mythological figures, Elatum and Minara, but doesn't expand on it. Gavin and Freelancer share a day of domestic bliss, baking a cake together. Freelancer asks about Elatum and Minara, and Gavin confirms that they are mythological figures and that their story is particularly treasured by empathy demons. Everyone planning to enter the Elemental and Energetic Games continues to practice in preparation for the approaching qualifier rounds. Milo continues his playthrough of Prey, much to his chagrin and Sweetheart's amusement. David and the members of the pack that work on the security team begin to learn the magic required to phase their clothes off and on when shifting. In the event of emergencies during security work, when they might need to shift, It's an important skill to have, given the much more public nature of their work nowadays. Warden attempts to make progress with Vega. He is expectedly evasive, continuing to redirect the conversation back to notions of demonic mistreatment at the hands of the department and the department's difficulties managing affairs. He mentions the close-knit is undermining confidence in them, and the Solitaires, a group devoted to demonic independence, is putting increased pressure on them as well. Before the conversation can finish, a group of Solitaires invades the containment facility. They release all the demons in containment, knock out Warden, who had tried to resist them, and briefly try to draw Vega to their side, but he defeats them easily and escapes with the unconscious Warden. Regulus is one of the demons released during the containment break. He immediately seeks to find his prior victim. Warden awakens to find themselves in Vega's care, heavily wounded from their conflict with the Solitaires. Vega attempts to help them, but requires that it be done on his terms, providing only sadistic energies to feed on. Vega and Warden grow closer as his care for them continues. He begins answering more of their questions, though he continues to guide the conversation into the areas he prefers. He affirms that he is not a member of the Solitaires, desiring a more complete form of independence from humanity. He wants to find a way to again use the Sovereigns as a food source, so that demonkind can leave Terra completely. Warden believes the Sovereigns to be myth, but Vega insists that isn't the case. October. Vega feels that Warden has recovered enough to take care of himself, and announces his plan to leave. He offers to take Warden with him if they wish, and they are tempted by the offer. Vega tells them more about the Sovereigns and the existential threat they represent, as well as the dangers of close-knit finding them first. Warden accepts his offer, and they begin their quest in earnest. In light of the containment breaches, the department orders tighter security for the upcoming qualifier events. While the games in December will remain open to the public, the qualifiers are made private, viewable only by other competitors and volunteer staff. David has been taking the lead on the preparations for the Elemental and Energetic Games, and as a result, Asher has stepped up to manage the current security gigs the Shaw Pack has picked up. The strain wears away at him, but Babe carves out some time for them to relax together. Lovely has a nightmare about their time with Adam. Vincent reassures them that does not mean they haven't made progress. He comforts them and helps them get back to sleep. Aaron is incredibly stressed out by his work at Vesta Distribution Co. Smartass resolves to help him relieve some of that stress, and is very successful. Babe and Asher spend quality time together relaxing on the couch. Ollie and his partner play Sorry. Calum returns to visit Freelancer, and they bake cookies together. Regulus finally tracks down his prior victim and ensnares them again. Their memories of him have been wiped previously, but he is unfazed, and his obsession continues to spiral. He wipes their boyfriend's memories of them to remove any competition. Regulus attempts to help his victim get to sleep by telling them the folklore story of the Star Children, Sky Gods, and Landborn. Though he also believes it to be myth, he is unknowingly telling them the true story of the Sovereigns and their ancient conflict with humanity and demonkind. Aaron stays up far later than intended in order to finish work. Smartass coerces him to return to bed. November. Freelancer and Gavin spend a lazy morning in bed together, at Gavin's insistence. Stress on many fronts has been wearing David thin for months now, and Angel is determined to help with that. Smartass tries unsuccessfully to keep Aaron in bed while he resolves to get up and work around the house. Freelancer competes in the qualifiers for the elemental and energetic games. No non-competitors can be present due to the stricter policies resulting from the containment breaches, meaning Gavin can't be present, but as volunteer staff, Lasco is exempt. Damien and Huxley are stuck in their onboarding during Freelancer's qualifier performance. Lasco is able to stay on hand to support Freelancer, though. Freelancer performs well and qualifies for the damn team. Freelancer makes it to Huxley just before he is called to perform his qualifier exhibition. They wish him luck, and he performs exceedingly well, setting a new record for the category and making the damn team. Huxley, Lasco, and Freelancer watch Damien's performance. He qualifies for the damn team. Gavin, Huxley, Lasco, Damien, and Freelancer all celebrate late into the night. Freelancer volunteers to sign in competitors for the remaining qualifiers. They finally meet Xavier, Huxley's team captain and friend, and they give him some much appreciated distraction and support in the lead up to his performance. He sets a new record and easily makes the damn team. Lovely returns from their qualifiers and excitedly shares the footage of it with Vincent. They successfully qualified, and Vincent tells them how proud of them he is. Aaron concedes to stay in bed on a rainy morning and asks that later that day they play some cards, an activity that reminds him of good times with his family. The damn friends spend Thanksgiving together. Gavin delights in teasing Damien until he's finally kicked out of the kitchen. Damien orders Huxley to help him finish up cooking, needing his calming presence. Gavin inquires with Lasco about attaining full certification and admits that he's interested in achieving it still, even all these years later. They all enjoy dinner together. Jordy realizes that Cutie is listening to his thoughts almost non-stop. They have an important conversation about boundaries, consent, and privacy, and Cutie promises to correct their behavior going forward. Gavin and Freelancer go ice skating, taking advantage of the brief respite in their schedules. Blake, a seer masquerading as a dreamwalker, reconnects with his childhood friend and attempts to convince them that he has found an answer to many of the questions that they used to theorize about. He believes that Close-Knit has the information they seek and tries to convince them to come to a meeting with him. Regulus's victim continues to dream of the boyfriend they had while Regulus was imprisoned. This frustrates the demon, and he begins to use stronger techniques to try to bend them to his will, replacing their boyfriend and their memories with an image of himself. He doubles down on his intention to rework the victim's mind to make them into the partner he wants them to be. Warden attempts to suggest some plans for seeking out the sovereigns to Vega, but he shuts them all down, stating that they would not be possible. When Warden questions his ability to know that, Vega finally reveals that he was there at the time of the cacophony and participated in the war against the sovereigns. While he considers himself irreparably changed from what he was then, he considers it his purpose to hold on to as much of the memory of those events as possible for when they would be useful. That time has now come. He plans to reach the sovereigns through Close-Knit, and he is honest with Warden that that will involve hurting people. If that's not something they are comfortable with, he understands, but then they need to part ways now. Warden chooses to stay with Vega and see it through. Another night of working late leaves Aaron burnt out and ready for a break. December. David organizes a trip for later in the month for the Shaw Pack and their guests to go up to the cabins to celebrate the solstice and unwind before the hard work the games will call for. Brachium establishes contact with Sunshine. A mental connection has unknowingly formed between them somehow as a result of Brachium's interference in their near loss in the River of Death. He has detected a force, which he calls a drove, that is growing immensely in strength beneath the river, and he fears that without help, something terrible might occur. He implores Sunshine to seek out the counterpoints to the growing power in death that exist in the living world. Sunshine tells Elliot what occurred. He's skeptical, but curious. He helps forge a connection between himself, Sunshine, and Brachium in a dreamscape. The dreamscape is overtaken by the visual of the River of Death, and the sight of it unearths Elliot's buried memories from his own time in the river during his drowning. Brachium explains the danger, and they agree to see what they can find. Sunshine and Elliot drive to Dahlia, a location that Elliot hasn't visited in years. He tells them more about his experience as a pseudo-human-born as a result of his adoption by an unempowered family, his education in becoming Labyrinth Black certified, and Dahlia. Sam notes that Frederick and his progeny have reached a point of independence now, which he's grateful for, but he harbors fears that he hasn't adequately mentored them. Darlin reassures him. They also invite Sam to join them on the Pack Solstice trip. Sam is nervous that he'll be imposing, but Darlin assures him that David said he's more than welcome. He agrees. Sam confirms that he will be attending the Elemental and Energetic Games at Vincent's request. Darlin affirms that they won't be working security that night and don't plan to attend. They begin to escalate their intimacy, but Sam asks for things to stay at this level for a while. Darlin happily agrees. Vincent takes Lovely north to William's illustrious Skyside property. He explains some of its history, and they revel in the amenities there. Elliot and Sunshine reach Dahlia and start investigating. They can detect the counterpoints Brachium mentioned within a building owned by CloseKnit. They decide to go to a meeting to try to learn more about the mysterious group. Jordy and Cutie go to the show he'd bought tickets to. They have a good time, but when they arrive home, the heater is broken. They find a more fun way to generate heat in the meantime. David, Asher, Angel, and Babe arrive at the cabins one night early so that they can get everything set up. Angel wakes up to find David chopping wood. The rest of the pack is on their way and will be arriving soon. Darlin and Sam will be arriving that evening due to the sunlight. David stresses how important it is to him that Sam be made to feel welcome, and he asks Asher to keep an eye out for him. Asher and Babe wake up early and take advantage of the fact that they arrived earlier than the others to get in some sledding before the rest of the pack arrives. Milo and Sweetheart enjoy some time in front of the fireplace before the solstice party begins. They discuss the stress Sweetheart is going through as an investigator for the department in light of the containment breaches and Milo's concerns about the games ahead. The Pack Solstice party begins in earnest. Sam meets Asher and Milo for the first time, and they do their best to make him feel welcome amidst their joking. David greets him and reaffirms that he's a welcome guest, and he's glad Sam is present. Christian and Arden bicker and are found by Kelsey, who alerts Asher to Christian's presence. Asher gives Christian a birthday gift in an effort to smooth over old tensions. Milo and Sweetheart run into Bailey and Ansel of the Keaton Pack, and they trade childhood memories and work stories. David gives a rousing speech affirming the promise that the pack all hold, to be there for one another. After 4 days of rowdy celebrations, the pack and their guests return to Dahlia. The Elemental and Energetic Games are mere days away. David and the security team do a dry run in preparation for the games. Everyone affirms that by now they are well versed in phasing their clothes while shifting. The dry run goes well, and although stress levels remain high, the pack feels confident in their ability to manage the event. The 39th Annual Elemental and Energetic Games officially begin on December 29th, hosted by the Dahlia Academy for Magical Novices. The spectacle is set to run for 3 days, drawing large crowds to the Academy Stadium each day, and live feeds of it are broadcast nationally. Hudson acts as the announcer for the games and coordinates with David's security team throughout. Lasco takes on a role as volunteer staff, helping to get the competitors to their performance events on time. The first day of events includes, but is not limited to, the combination elemental, water elemental, and air elemental events. On the first day of the games, Freelancer meets with Lasco ahead of their performance. He encourages them, but is drawn away briefly, at which point Cody appears and taunts them, attending the games as a representative for the McKinley Academy. Lasco pulls Cody aside and warns him to leave Freelancer alone, but Cody rebuffs him. Freelancer completes their event, getting 8th place. Damien, Huxley, Lasco, and Freelancer celebrate. Damien, Huxley, Lasco, Gavin, and Freelancer go out for a celebratory dinner. Calum celebrates Freelancer's success and congratulates them. He departs soon afterward to go tend to another of his charges. Gavin congratulates Freelancer again and helps them relax in the wake of their exertion. The second day of the Elemental and Energetic Games begins on the 30th and includes the Fire and Earth Elemental events. Lasco and Freelancer barely make it inside the reinforcing ward before the events begin. During performances, a ward is brought down around the stadium and surrounding grounds to isolate the effects of the performances and maintain covert, maintained by a large contingent of advanced warders distributed at discrete locations for security's sake. Freelancer meets with Huxley and they watch Damien's performance together. Damien performs exceptionally, getting 3rd overall and earning the bronze medal. He brings his friends to meet his mother, who is watching in the crowd. Huxley does his event and easily takes 1st place, earning the gold and setting a new national record. The third and final day of the Elemental and Energetic Games begins on the 31st and includes the Contra-Elemental and Energetic categories. Vincent and Sam head to the stadium by department-issued transport and are escorted up to a special viewing box to be safe from the sunlight. The pack continues their security efforts, having worked the event thus far with few issues. One of the dam staff members that was intended to walk the medals into the stadium for the ceremony that evening is unable to attend, so Lasco volunteers to do so. Xavier performs his event and gets 1st place, setting a new national record. Sam and Vincent watch Lovely perform, and they get 2nd place. Sam and Vincent congratulate them heartily. Blake and his friend attend a close-knit outreach meeting. Close-knit's bigoted views are very quickly made apparent, and Blake's friend is unsettled. Unbeknownst to them, Elliot and Sunshine are attending the same meeting as part of their investigation. Aaron finally earns his promotion, becoming the director of accounting at Vesta Distribution Co. He attempts to share the news with Elliot, but Elliot doesn't answer. Aaron resolves not to let that bring down his mood, fully unaware of the circumstances that are preventing Elliot from responding. Deeply unsettled by the content of the close-knit meeting, Elliot and Sunshine are led to a back room to discuss particulars about joining. They defy efforts to separate them, and after unproductive questioning, they are momentarily left alone. Elliot and Sunshine decide to make a run for it, but are knocked unconscious in their attempt. They awaken in the building's basement with Blake, who tells them that he knows about Brachium and plans to use their connection to him to open communications with the realm of death. He draws Sunshine into a dreamscape. Brachium manages to enter the dream as well, and uses his powers to shelter Sunshine for as long as he can, but his abilities in the dreamscape are limited. Brachium has realized that he has been misled in his believed purpose, and that his memories of his past have been occluded from him. He vows to defend them in any way he can, but his powers are fading. He uses the last of his strength to reassure Sunshine that they can beat Blake, and to draw Elliot into the dream for support. As he reawakens in the river of death, he hears a deep, rhythmic drumming coming from deep in death, near the veil. He wonders if maybe they are too late after all. Sunshine finds Elliot in the dreamscape, but he is still powerless because his core has been muted by Blake. Blake finds them both and is furious. He emotionally torments Sunshine with memories of their fatal car accident and tortures Elliot. They concede to his demands so that he will stop. Blake offers to free Elliot if Sunshine will help him open a dialogue with Brachium. They agree, against Elliot's wishes. Sunshine, Blake, and Elliot reemerge in the waking world. Elliot is taken away, and Blake informs Sunshine that his memories of them will be removed, but promises that they will be restored if they succeed. Sunshine tries to inquire about Blake's motives, and he informs them that all of this is being done to save his friend, who is in mortal danger of some kind. He rebukes further conversation attempts and leaves. Avier, an inchoate demon, attempts to covertly feed on Blake, who he assumes to be a dreamwalker that is associated with Closenet. Blake detects him and attempts to rebuff Avier. In the confusion, Avier tries to rift away, but due to the urgency of the situation, he doesn't realize that his rift pulls in Starlight as well, an innocent human bystander. This would usually result in the human's death, as a human can't survive in Aria, the endpoint of all rifts. But the rift seemingly collapses midway, with both Avier and Starlight in it, implying that they are somehow trapped in the meridian itself, the space between Terra and Aria. It takes the appearance of a warped version of Dante's imagining of hell, which Avier correctly suspects is due to Blake's limited influence through the confluence of his, Avier's, and ultimately the Meridian's combined powers. Blake arrives at his friend's house that evening, and recognizing that they didn't approve of the meeting's contents, he reaffirms that his friendship with them is more important than any affiliation he has with that group. They admit to him that they've been having trouble sleeping, and he helps them get to sleep, spending the night in their home on their couch. Avier and Starlight struggle to find a way out of the collapsed rift, unsure if it's a natural occurrence, a trap of Blake's design, or something else entirely. They are suspicious of each other, but form a bond over time, and begin a relationship in the collapsed rift. Eventually, they develop a plan to get out, but during the execution of it, Starlight begins to be absorbed into the fabric of the Meridian. Believing this will kill them, Avier expends all of his power in one explosive burst that successfully tears Starlight free of the collapsed rift, but leaves him still trapped within it. Avier realizes that he can see outside of the collapsed rift into the real world, as if a window has been presented to him. Through it, he sees that Starlight is indeed back in the real world, but their memories of the events within the rift are gone, and Avier's perception of time has clearly been radically warped by some force, where years in the rift amount to only minutes in the real world. Avier's only hope is to pull Starlight back into the rift but he resists for years, wanting them to be free. Avier finally caves and reluctantly pulls Starlight back in. Because they have no memory of him or the rift, he initially tries to keep them at arm's length with a rude, sarcastic facade so that they won't repeat their life-threatening attempt to free them both from the rift, though it's a struggle to maintain the facade. Avier and Starlight develop feelings for each other again, and before they can become any more serious, Avier tells them the full truth. Starlight is initially furious at the deception, but comes to understand Avier's reasoning. They choose to attempt to break them both free of the rift again, and this time, at their insistence, Avier doesn't intervene. Starlight is fully enveloped by the Meridian, who reveal themselves as the combined essences of the sovereigns Elatum and Minara. The sovereigns confirm that they are responsible for collapsing the rift and for forcing Avier to draw Starlight back in, acts which they feel no regret for because they were in service of a greater good. The Meridian is failing, and only the strength of another sovereign will reinforce it. The collapsed rift was their only way of establishing communication with someone on Terra, hence their actions. Starlight and Avier are tasked with finding a way to repair the Meridian and are deposited back on Terra. Unbeknownst to Avier or Starlight, Elatum and Minara chose to enact a contingency plan, using Avier as the vessel to get it on the material plane of Terra without his knowledge or permission. That contingency plan is Hush, an immensely powerful being that is the silence of the spell song given form and shape. He is given a clear but limited directive: get a sovereign and bring it to the Meridian to re-empower them, and do whatever is necessary to remove anyone that tries to stop him in those efforts. The medals ceremony of the Elemental and Energetic Games is scheduled to start at 7 p.m. The stadium is the fullest it has been throughout the entire games. Lasco and Milo begin the process of escorting the medals toward the stadium. Ahead of them, Asher and David guard the MVPs that will be presenting the medals. Gavin and Freelancer wait in the crowd at the stadium to watch Huxley and Damien receive their medals. Hudson begins announcing the closing ceremony at David's signal. In their viewing box, Vincent and Sam suddenly start to hear the rhythmic drumming that Brachium had heard earlier, but they don't know the source. In death, Brachium's greatest fears are realized as the drumming reaches a fever pitch, and a force deep in the river speaks, telling him that death has arrived. In the living world, an aperture tears open in the sky above the stadium. Shades, malevolent beings from the realm of death that drain humans of their life force, begin pouring into the stadium through the portal. Chaos erupts. Gavin attempts to get the Freelancer to safety. Outside the stadium, Milo, David, Asher, and Lasco watch in horror, unsure of what's happening. David rushes to the control booth to find out the gravity of the situation. The people in the stadium attempt to escape onto the grounds as the Shades begin their overwhelming assault on the helpless crowd. Some kind of interference disables long-range communication and electronic signals in the Shades' proximity. At David's order, Milo escorts the MVPs to the safety of their van, while Asher meets his alpha in the control booth. David, Asher, and Hudson observe that the attacking force are Shades and try to make a plan before it's too late. Hudson suggests sealing the ward, which might be able to hold them in place so they can't escape and ravage all of Dahlia and beyond. David is faced with the impossible decision to either reactivate the ward and contain the outbreak, but trap everyone in the stadium and surrounding grounds with them, or do nothing and allow the shades to escape. He reactivates the ward. As it prepares to seal, he rushes onto the grounds to defend anyone inside it that he can. Asher follows him in. Milo tries to follow them, but is seconds too late. The ward seals, trapping him outside and the others inside. Brachium realizes, hopelessly, that he was too late, and that the cause is lost. The river runs both ways tonight, with a flood tide of shades pouring into the living world, and the countless victims being taken by death. Gavin realizes the ward is sealing and manages to rush Freelancer to the outer boundary before it seals. He plans to stay and help, but is clearly in some kind of pain. Freelancer jumps back in just as the ward seals, determined to stay with him. Asher and David run toward the stadium, but the interference prevents them from hearing the other shifters through the link they usually share while shifted, unless they stay close. The radios equally struggle to work at anything but short-range communication, and phones can't get a signal. They commit to helping as many people as possible to escape the stadium, planning to regroup somewhere more easily defended. Lasco finds Milo and tells him that the department has arrived. Milo rushes to meet them. Inside the ward, Damien and Huxley fight to escape the stadium. Their position on the main stage leaves them at the epicenter of the chaos, fighting to find a way out. They are nearly lost to collateral damage in the crowded hallways by those trying to fight back against the shades, but they manage to get outside, only to realize that the ward has been activated. Vincent is frantic to reach Lovely. Sam steadies him and helps him use his connection to them to locate them in the chaos. They head that way. Milo meets with Commissioner Jet, who is leading the department efforts at the disaster. Jet tells him they won't drop the ward until sufficient demon forces arrive, because with no ability to see what is happening in the ward, including how many shades they are facing, he feels they will need their strength in order to stand a chance. Milo is furious and storms away, meeting up with Lasco to update him and try to reassure him. Milo calls the mates and rest of the pack and informs them of the disaster. Starlight and Avier attempt to help as the inversion event unfolds. Avier goes to warn the chorus, while Starlight does what they can from outside the ward. Gavin is severely affected by the overwhelming emotions from the panicking masses, with it being drastically amplified by the sealing of the ward, turning it into an echo chamber for the emotional energy. He struggles to use his powers to help others regardless. David and Asher continue to shepherd people out of the stadium, directing them to a position out on the fringes of the ward, where they are trying to set up a defensible position. It becomes clear that the shades are confused by the wolves when they are in their shifted form, and David and Asher use this to their advantage. Damien and Huxley try to think of ways to repel or defeat the shades, but have no conclusive results. Shades are intangible until they have absorbed enough life force, at which point they solidify and become vulnerable to physical attacks, but that advantage only comes at a high loss of innocent life. Sam and Vincent find Lovely and escape outside, but find the ward has sealed. Gavin and Freelancer reach the stadium, and Gavin tries to use his powers to disable the shades, but the cumulative effects of the emotional bombardment cause him to collapse. Xavier attempts to buy them time while Freelancer drags Gavin to relative safety. Xavier dies at the hands of the shades. Freelancer's fear ignites Gavin's core, and his powers manifest, forming a new defensive ward within the existing one. Milo confronts Jet about his lack of action, but is turned away again. he decides to take matters into his own hands. David and Asher struggle to establish a defensible area for the survivors they have helped move away from the stadium. The other members of the pack set up similar positions on the far side of the grounds. Sweetheart, Angel, and Babe all arrive at the scene separately. Angel runs into Lasco, who offers to take them to Milo. Sweetheart finds Milo, and they share a brief moment together before Angel and Babe arrive. Milo explains the situation as best he can, then draws Sweetheart aside to inform them of a plan he has come up with. Inside the ward, many of the shades have absorbed enough life force to become solid, and in doing so, have become vulnerable to traditional attacks. Asher and David fight off another wave of them, and in the brief respite afterwards assess their situation. It is dire. With no communication to the outside world, they have no idea when or if help is coming. The survivors, themselves included, are running out of magic from overuse. As the shades grow stronger, they no longer are confused by the shifted wolves, and their tactics are improving. Asher notes that David is upset with him, and though he initially denies it, David admits that while he knew Asher would follow him in, he wishes he hadn't, because he fears for Asher's life. Asher counters that he will always follow David, not because he is his alpha, but because he is his best friend, and what they have together is more than the promise of a camaraderie that the rest of the pack shares. They tell one another that they love each other, and share an embrace before parting so that they can face the coming wave of shades. They promise one another that this isn't the end, and that they will survive this. Asher doesn't actually believe this, but he doesn't say so aloud. Gavin's ward within the ward has become a focal point for the Shade's assault. While he's grateful for that on one hand, because it means that those outside of it are likely safer, it is putting him under incredible strain that threatens to destroy him. Damien and Huxley are on the run, trying to reach a defendable position with a group of survivors. A wave of shades descends on them, and Huxley and Damien order the others to run while they try to fight them off and buy time. The shades avoid their attacks and join with a flanking group that come together to wipe out all the remaining survivors that had been with the elementals, despite their best efforts. Damien and Huxley, alone again and out of options, continue toward the training grounds. Vincent, Lovely, and Sam find David and Asher's safe zone. Shaw Pack Alpha and Solaire Prince meet for the first time. Sam, Vincent, and Lovely commit themselves to the defense of the survivors, for which David is grateful. The situation has continued to grow worse, with almost constant assault by the Shades. David is dismissive of his own injuries, but hours of constant fighting have taken a terrible toll on him. Nate Wexler, a department officer, arrives at the control booth and informs Jet that the ward is weakening. He asks if they are cleared to seek help from non-department demons, but amid fears that the chorus has been organizing attacks on department facilities, the idea is rejected. Damien and Huxley reach the observation tower of the training grounds, but find it occupied by a water elemental who uses his powers to push them away, refusing to help them or share the space. Damien realizes that it's Cody, and storms into the tower against Huxley's objections and confronts him. Cody admits to using his powers to secure the spot only for himself, and pushing away other survivors and leaving them at the Shade's mercy. Disgusted, Damien attacks Cody, until Huxley is finally able to drag him off the other man and back out into the field. Damien fully breaks down under the strain of the horrific losses they've witnessed. Huxley manages to steady him, insisting that he's here and won't leave Damien. They head in the direction of the sounds of resistance, not knowing that it's in fact David and Asher's safe zone. Milo tells Sweetheart his plan to disrupt the warder's magic so that the ward will fall, at which point the assembled might of Dam and Dahlia can defeat the Shades. Sweetheart agrees to help. Gavin's ward starts to collapse as the terrible strain of the Shades' bombardment and the survivor's emotional overload begins to literally tear him apart. Freelancer is able to ground him enough to keep him intact, barely, and the ward holds for the time being. Milo asks Lasco to rally the students and staff of Dam to be ready for when the ward drops. Lasco doesn't think he can, but Milo reassures him, and he agrees. Milo attempts to go alone, but Sweetheart insists on joining him. Inside the ward, the largest wave of Shades yet assaults the Shifter's hideout, pushing the defense team to their absolute limit. Vincent barely saves Lovely from an attack and is flanked as a result. Lovely manages to drive them off him, but is caught off guard in the wake of it and is violently drained within an inch of their life. Vincent kills the Shade and tries to heal Lovely, but it isn't working. Asher is brutally struck down by a Shade and sustains mortal injuries. David runs to him, but the damage is already done. David cries out for Sam, who appears and begs the vampire to help heal Asher. Sam does, channeling his own and David's remaining magic to heal Asher, who finally awakens. David breaks down in relief as Vincent calls out for Sam. Lasco uses the intercom at Dam to try and rally everyone there to go to the ward for help. The efforts are successful. Sam arrives to find Lovely dying in Vincent's arms, unable to be healed because their life force has been drained. He tells Vincent the only option remaining would be to turn them. Vincent asks if that is what Lovely wants, saying that he will spend eternity at their side if they let him, but that he won't turn them unless it's truly what they want. They affirm that it is, and he does. Asher and Lovely are moved down into the underground area that they have been defending. Sam tries to convince David to join them, but the Alpha refuses. Another wave of Shades attacks. David struggles to shift, but ignores Sam's objections and successfully transforms. The Shades' assault begins anew, and after hours of nonstop fighting, David's strength finally gives out. A strike from a Shade throws him to the ground and knocks him back into his human form, his magic completely spent. Just before it can finish him, Damien and Huxley arrive and drive them off. Damien tells Huxley to get David to safety while he holds off the next wave. Sam is overwhelmed by a Shade and only just succeeds in defeating it. He and Vincent share a brief moment, realizing that their strength and magic have been used up. They commit to bringing as many of the Shades down with them as they can, and prepare to make their last stand. Damien expends all of his remaining magic, trying to keep the Shades' assault at bay, but it isn't enough. His powers run dry, and he believes it is the end. Huxley arrives back just as a Shade violently attacks the fire elemental, and Huxley's fury explodes into a violent earthquake that consumes the Shade and tears the earth asunder. Outside the ward, Milo and Sweetheart feel the earthquake rack the grounds and realize that means the ward must be considerably weakened. Fearing the department may find a way to reinforce it, they immediately execute their plan. Milo reveals that he plans to step into the convergence point of the warder's magic, using his ability as a shifter to absorb magic to destabilize the ward. He isn't sure what the effects to his own body will be. He and Sweetheart share a kiss, and he steps in, unsure if he will step back out alive. It's a success, disrupting the magic and dropping the ward. The assembled crowds successfully destroy the shades. Jet orders that the area be secured and that all survivors are led to the triage stations. Lasco finds Huxley and Damien and helps them get to the healing stations. Angel and Babe reach David and Asher, and they reunite. Darlin finds Sam, and he finally breaks down in their arms. Vincent races Lovely to safety. Milo regains consciousness, heavily wounded, and he and Sweetheart make their way outside. They successfully make radio contact with David and Asher, and he collapses in relief. Brachium comes to the realization that this act wasn't meant as an invasion, but rather as a feast, where the forces below the River of Death could gorge on the magic and energy of those who died. He wonders how much time they have left before something greater than shades breaks free. With the lowering of the ward, Starlight and Avier rush in and help with the disaster relief efforts. 2022. January. 1 hour after the inversion disaster resolves, Vincent has Lovely safely back to their home and meets with William, who's been terrified for them after hearing the news. William comforts Vincent as best he can, and Vincent begs him to invoke him like William once did to Alexis, taking away his ability to ever invoke Lovely. He doesn't ever want to have that power over them. William reminds him of the importance of having that ability, and Vincent agrees, but still insists that he doesn't want it. And since Lovely will no longer be able to lie to him due to the bond of truth inherent to the maker-progeny relationship, he asks that he be made to not be able to lie to them either. William agrees, and does so. Gavin and Freelancer arrive home 2 hours after the inversion resolution. Gavin's injuries are severe, but mending. Calum appears, and the widespread pain and fear tearing through all of Dahlia overwhelms him, and he has a breakdown. Gavin successfully gathers enough strength to rift the empathy demon back to Arya. Delphinus, Calum's steward, takes Calum into his care. The distance from Terra is enough to help Calum be steadied. Gavin returns to Freelancer and collapses at the exertion of more magic usage. He explains that the emotional overload has made it so that the simple act of being on this plane will bring Calum pain until things calm a bit. Freelancer helps him to bed, and they hold each other. Lovely wakes up. Vincent is there and comforts them while also explaining the situation as best he can. Elliot awakens in front of an incubus, Scorpius. Scorpius informs him about the plan to remove his memories and the demon's obligation to do so despite his reservations about it. Elliot begs him not to, and they manage to reach an agreement wherein Scorpius will only briefly mute his memories so that Elliot can be led away, and Elliot can then muster the necessary forces to bring down Close-Knit and free both Sunshine and Scorpius. They enact the plan, and Elliot is escorted away. As promised, Blake lets Sunshine watch Elliot be escorted out. They then enter the dreamscape again, hoping to lure in Brachium. The Dreamwalker doesn't appear, still too drained to make the connection. In his frustration, Blake's memories of his friend begin to seep through into the dream, allowing Sunshine to get some information on Blake's motives. They leave the dreamscape, and Sunshine tries to push with the information they now have, but Blake aggressively rebukes them. That evening, he returns to his friend's home and confesses that it was a difficult day that's been wearing on him heavily, and they comfort him. They ask him to spend the night again. He happily agrees. Blake relaxes with his friend, and they reassure him that they want him to spend the night. They ask why he left their life in the past. He explains that after a one-night stand that the two of them had in high school, he wanted to be in a relationship with them, but they didn't at the time, and it started a push and pull between them of seeking and resisting distance from one another to sort out their feelings. He asks to stay in their life from here on out, even just as friends. They kiss him, but he pulls away, stating in clear terms that if they do this and attempt a relationship, he's never going to want to let them go, making his obsessive and possessive tendencies apparent. He asks that they not do this unless they are absolutely sure that's what they want. They kiss him, accepting. The department releases their official statement on the inversion disaster, noting the 1,500 lives lost, the lack of leads on who could be responsible for the attack, and the assurance that they will do everything they can to investigate, provide support, and ensure safety. All large-scale multi-member magical competitions, exhibitions, and experimentation are put on indefinite hiatus, under suspicions that the high amounts of concentrated magic usage may have had a hand in the formation of the inversion aperture. Permanent department security forces will be stationed in all cornerstone cities and major academies and will supersede and integrate any existing local government-operated equivalents. Permanent surveillance and containment teams will be stationed at the formation point of the inversion aperture in Dahlia. Entrance to that zone is restricted to approved department personnel. Department-mandated safety and emergency response requirements and documentation will be issued to all empowered businesses, academies, and institutions, and compliance will be overseen by the Empowered Public Security Administration. Elliot's memories slowly begin to trickle back as he finds himself alone on the streets of Dahlia. He remembers enough to know he needs help, and he seeks out a department office. When he reaches one, he realizes that it is absolute chaos. He learns about the inversion event, which just occurred the night before. Overwhelmed, he stumbles back out into the streets and, not knowing what else to do in that moment, calls his brother Aaron and asks to see him. Aaron and Smartass enjoy a lazy morning together, celebrating Smartass's promotion at their company. Their relaxation is disrupted when Aaron receives an unexpected call from Elliot for the first time in years. He answers and can immediately tell how distressed his brother is. Elliot asks to see him, and Aaron readily agrees, asking for details, but Elliot says he'll provide them when he gets there, and hangs up. Blake arrives back at the close-knit facility and takes Sunshine down to a secure level. He explains to them that he has no actual allegiance to close-knit, but is instead using their resources to his advantage. He reveals that shades are beings created by the sovereigns trapped in death as a way of communicating with the living, provided they absorb enough life force, and explains that close-knit received that message and formed into what it is today as a result. In an attempt to force Brachium's hand, Blake threatens to allow a shade to kill Sunshine if he doesn't appear in the dreamscape. Brachium concedes and asks why Blake is doing all of this. Blake reveals that he isn't actually a dreamwalker, but is instead a seer, and that no matter what he tries to change, he can't escape visions of his friend's death. He believes the sovereigns can explain or prevent that. Brachium calls him a fool, but agrees to ask them on Blake's behalf in order to keep Sunshine safe. Cutie learns about the inversion disaster, and although they didn't lose anyone in it, they're terrified at the implications. Geordie tries to help comfort them as best he can. Elliot arrives at Aaron's house and confirms discreetly that the problem he's facing has to do with magic. He and Aaron go for a drive to discuss it privately. Elliot tells Aaron that he believes Aaron hates him. Aaron fiercely refutes this, discussing the pain of their childhood while reasserting that he loves Elliot and wants him in his life. Elliot breaks down and explains through the tears everything that has happened up to this point. Aaron is understandably confused, but reassures Elliot that he's going to help him, and they decide to go back to the house, explain all of this to Smartass, and come up with a plan. Aaron and Elliot return to Aaron's home, where he intends to tell Smartass that magic exists. To his shock, when he tries to explain it, he finds that they already know about it due to an ex-partner who was empowered. The three of them then try to form a plan, and ultimately decide that despite the chaos of the inversion, they have to go to the department. They keep the explanation simple, not involving brachium, not surmising on the connection to the inversion, just stating that Close-Knit has taken Sunshine. Despite the administrative chaos, they do eventually get through to an investigator, and he promises to organize a group to get Sunshine out. Brachium descends deeper into death so that he can commune with the Drove and ask them Blake's question. They initially rebuke him, but eventually offer to answer the question if Brachium will bind himself to follow a single order of theirs, to be determined at a future date. Brachium agrees, and the Drove confirms that they are responsible for twisting events to always lead to the death of Blake's love, all in an effort to get him to break so that he might be of service to them. They then send Brachium away without further detail. Brachium returns and tells Blake what the Drove said, and that any effort to negotiate will likely fail. They consider him a tool, nothing more. Brachium attempts to guide Blake to use his powers to reinforce the Sovereign's prison rather than to free them, because that should limit their powers enough to save his love. Blake refuses to do so, and instead forms his own plan. Blake wakes both himself and Sunshine and sends them away, planning to have their memories wiped like Elliot's were and then have them released. He then enters the room with the shade and allows it to steal his life force, sending himself into death so that he might commune with the Drove directly. Diderodon, the gravitic sovereign, has become the commanding voice of the amalgamation of sovereigns that compose the Drove. He speaks directly to Blake, informing him that he was specifically needed because he was a seer, and the fragment of sovereignty that every seer carries makes them a viable vessel to carry a piece of Diderodon to Terra. Blake attempts to negotiate, but his efforts fail, and he's left with the decision to become Diderodon's vessel or die. He chooses the former. Blake is returned to life, now harboring a fragment of Diderodon within him, who speaks in his mind. When Blake resists his orders, Diderodon forces Blake to hurt himself to show that he has no authority over what happens going forward. Blake manages to convince Diderodon to let him have at least some input, though, and he makes the decision to free the four shades in Close-Knit's containment in order to cause chaos that will cover their escape. The department storms Close-Knit at the same time, cutting the power to the building. In the chaos, Sunshine escapes into the care of the department, guided by Brachium. Diderodon teaches Blake transposition magic in order to facilitate their own escape. Alone in death, Brachium calls out to Manara, begging her for one last grace, to return him to Terra so that he can finish this quest on his own and free Sunshine and Elliot from the burden of it. Against all odds, Manara answers, creating the portal for him to do so. Elliot and Sunshine are reunited and return home with Aaron. Brachium is there, and after discussion, it becomes clear that he plans to modify their memories so that all of them can be free of this, now that he is back in the living world and can handle it himself. Meanwhile, Blake's transposition leads him to his friend, who he finally confesses everything to. His obsessive love for them, his deals with Close-Knit and now with Dideridon. Dideridon considers the effort to explain in words to be inefficient, so he reaches into their mind and gives them Blake's memories so that they can see what he has done and what he will become. They confess their own feelings for Blake in return, and Dideridon, though unamused, concedes that Blake can keep his pet as long as they are useful. Elliot, Sunshine, Aaron, and Smartass play a game of cards, their memories of all the struggles erased. Brachium observes them from a distance, pleased with his work. Scorpius appears and tells Brachium that he has plans to help him in his efforts to find and defeat Blake and Dideridon, after all he did to him. 2 days after the inversion resolution, Freelancer goes to see Lasco. He is packing up his office, having been awarded a promotion to the administrative board in the wake of the disaster. He is evasive when questioned about it, insisting that it doesn't matter given what everyone else went through. Freelancer presses him for more, and Lasco admits that he feels undeserving of the role, feeling that he was only offered it because of political machinations and posturing by Dam in light of their dispute with Dump over the handling of the disaster. Lasco angrily tells them to stop comforting him, saying that they need and deserve the comfort, not him. They reassure him regardless, and he thanks them for their concern. They discuss the grief counseling options that Dump and Dam have coordinated to provide. He assures that he is there to help them as well, in any way that he can. 3 days after the inversion resolution, Freelancer meets up with Damien. Damien tells them that he is fine, having recovered from his injuries, and he has begun training again in earnest. Freelancer rightly expresses concern that he's overworking himself, which Damien rebukes. They push the issue, and Damien snaps, insisting that Freelancer has no right to tell him how to handle his grief. He then breaks down, admitting that he is haunted by what he faced that night, by feelings of inadequacy, shame, and guilt, and that he doesn't know how to get back to a normal life after the things he has seen and suffered. He feels isolated even from Huxley, who he feels he owes his life to. Freelancer comforts him, and he thanks them, and he comforts them in turn, refuting their claims that what they went through is somehow less significant than what he has faced. He adamantly tells them that pain is not a competition, and that their grief is equally important. He is scheduled to begin counseling the next day. Dump holds a ceremony to give department commendation medals to each member of the security team, and to give David the Directorial Medal of Valor, making him the first non-department personnel in history to be awarded it. 3 days after the inversion resolution, David and Angel return home from the dump ceremony. David has been asked to speak at the memorial scheduled for the coming week, but he has yet to decide if he will do so. Opinions of him and the pack are mixed, but generally supportive, aided by the stories coming from the survivors that were actually there to see their heroism in person. The department has chosen to laud the security team as heroes, but that is a mixed bag in and of itself, given the disastrous public opinion of the department in the wake of the tragedy. David believes adamantly that the department must have considered pinning the disaster on him and the pack, but that still would have made them look complicit for having agreed to keep the ward up so long. So instead, Dump went the other way and lifted them as heroes with full departmental support in a bid to get in on the goodwill. David refuses to be a mouthpiece for them. While he thinks the world is better in general for having the structure the department provides, especially in the wake of a disaster like this, where paranoia is at an all-time high, he refuses to be a PR tool for them. Though many members of the pack sustained severe injury, they all survived, which is a further source of guilt for David. He remains tormented by the memories of what happened that night and the decisions he made, and feels like he's trapped in a loop that he can't escape, and blames himself for every life lost. Angel provides all the support that they can, and the two of them resolve to keep hanging on by leaning on each other. 4 days after the inversion resolution, Asher and Babe are struggling to maintain some shred of optimism in the face of the disaster. Asher's injuries, though healed, were very severe and have left him with scars on his chest which he tries to ignore but that weigh on him heavily. Milo sends Asher a video that is circulating of an ad put out by Close-Knit in the wake of the disaster. Asher is disgusted about it and snaps, furious that Close-Knit thinks they know what was the right course of action when no one who wasn't there can say that. He confesses that he couldn't have made the decision that David made in the control booth that night. He froze when presented with the scene and wouldn't have been able to make a decision in time if David hadn't been there to make the choice. Asher fears what might happen if a situation comes where he is the one to have to make a choice like that. All his latent fears about his inadequacy have returned at their worst, now combining with his survivor guilt to leave him utterly shaken. He recounts to Babe what it was like that night, after he was too wounded to fight and was taken to the underground. No one down there believed they would survive the night, and he watched, powerless, as families said goodbye to one another, unable to reassure them because he thought they were right. Babe comforts him. 5 days after the inversion resolution, Freelancer meets up with Huxley, who has returned home from visiting his mom's after the disaster. They talk about Xavier and how much Huxley misses his friend, but that he wants to live a life that honors his sacrifice. Huxley doesn't blame Gavin for Xavier's death, and wants to assure the incubus that he shouldn't blame himself either. He and Freelancer discuss their upcoming grief counseling sessions and their support for one another. Later that evening, Gavin returns home after having to debrief the chorus on the events of the inversion. As the only demon that was present inside the ward, they wanted his interpretation of events. Gavin states that while humanity and demonkind often have a rocky relationship, the chorus was genuinely horrified to hear and experience the events of that evening through Gavin's memories, mourning the loss of life. Gavin resolves to call Huxley that evening. 6 days after the inversion resolution, Sweetheart has attained the department's private report on the events of the night. They review it with Milo, and in doing so learn that the department's restraint was primarily motivated by the ongoing attacks and containment breaks led by demons against their facilities, which Dump fears may be acting at the will of the chorus. Dump feared, and continues to fear, that the chorus had a hand in the inversion itself, and that asking for aid would be playing directly into their hands and would have made the situation far worse. Though the context for their actions is interesting, Milo still finds it hard to believe that the chorus would ever make such a move against humanity, even if they are responsible for the containment breaches. Milo instead suspects Close-Knit was involved. He remains concerned about his inability to shift into his wolf form, but believes it is just a matter of time before it returns. 9 days after the inversion resolution, Sam returns home from a drive to clear his head to find Darlin waiting on his porch. He gives them a key to his house, and they discuss the inversion and the feelings that it has brought on. Sam confesses that while he was able to compartmentalize his feelings in the moment in order to be the anchor for everyone else, now that the disaster is over, the emotions from that night are coming in and threatening to overwhelm him. Darlin offers their support, and they comfort each other. Darlin tells Sam they consider him their mate. He is honored by the admission and confesses his love for them. Lovely awakens mid-sleep with feelings of extreme hunger. Vincent helps them through their first feeding, giving them blood bags to drain. Vincent finally explains why he was invoked for the first time, recounting the story of how his hatred of having been turned against his will drove him to refuse to feed, and how William eventually invoked him to force him to sustain himself. Lovely asks if Vincent still hates William, but Vincent doesn't feel that way anymore. He has hated him in the past, but he considers William family now, and loves him like family. He waited 10 years to take William's name, but now he wears the Solaire name with pride. Vincent assures Lovely that the House of Solaire is all behind them as well, and that they have support. Avier and Starlight attempt to regroup after the events of the inversion. The chaos of it has stilted any kind of meaningful response to their concerns about the meridian from the chorus. Avier and Starlight decide to take their concerns to the department, hoping for a better response. Avier is tormented by auditory hallucinations that he can't explain, and they have escalated to immense physical pain as well. Avier can't explain what is happening, and his condition deteriorates extremely rapidly. Avier attempts to rift to Cercinus to seek help, but his efforts fail. As his pain reaches a crescendo, a new being tears itself out of the fabric of his being. Hush, now made manifest. Hush attempts to explain his reason for existing, but struggles to do so, and Avier's pain and confusion causes him to lash out. Hush disappears, telling Avier not to follow him. Avier is left even more confused than before. After tearing himself free of Avier, Hush is apprehended by Aria authorities, the Articulates.